Bonne journée. Bonne journée. Merci pour m'inviter pour cette conférence. C'est très bien. Et là, je veux parler en anglais pour faire ma présentation. Yes, like it already has been explained, I'm Jan Jongert, one of the founders of Superuse. We started in 1997 with starting up a circular architecture firm, but the whole term of circularity was not known by then. We invented all kind of tools and to be able to work in the way that we wanted to work, not using preferably any new resources for our built environment. And I will present some of the works that we in the past, but also very recently have completed, and we're growing the amount of circularity in each project. So I'll share my screen to start the presentation. I hope it's well visible. The Netherlands has made a commitment to 50% of circularity in the year 2030 and 100% in the year 2050. So there's large steps to be taken, but even in a country that is considered to be a front runner of circularity, currently we only have 8% of circularity in the Netherlands. This illustration is a map that we drew on the basis of research that has been made in 2022. So we see that currently still 92% of our resources are virgin resources. So in 6 years, there's a lot to be done, and we think this cannot be done within the current context and economic system that's working. When we started our office, we thought it's enough to just show it's possible, to prove with built examples that already today it's possible to realize buildings that have over half of the materials being used as reclaimed materials. So one of the first built examples was Villa Welplo, a house for 2 art collectors in the east of the Netherlands, and they allowed us to build this house according to our Superuse philosophy. What we used were steel beams from a steel textile machine that we bought and turned into the the main construction of this house. We didn't know any specifications, but actually together with a structure engineer, we were able to work on this project and realized it, and also calculated that we were able to save around 90% of CO2 emissions by repurposing steel instead of recycling steel. Another material we used was wood. The whole facade has been made of cable reels. It's a material that becomes redundant after 5 years of use. The boards are very sturdy, same size boards that we can use for our facade. We found a treatment that actually enlarged the lifespan of this material up to 35 years of guarantee. Unfortunately, this factory that treats this with just steam was 100 kilometers away. So here I must say that we actually were able to have a design that was the result of the size of the materials. That's how we design. But actually the CO2 emissions were not that much less from using new wood. Of course, new wood has a low impact, but because of the transport, we only gained 10% compared to using new wood. These were 2 of the examples that we learned from and that we could employ in other projects afterwards. We realized this project in 2009. This way of working is not new at all. This is my favorite painting of Vincent van Gogh. He painted this when he was in a small town of Nuenen in the south of the Netherlands, where he painted a local community at the auction of the church of Nuenen. So what happens in the middle, you see an auction master, and he's selling the different parts of the church after it's crumbling down to the local community. And even the crosses from the graveyards apparently are being taken apart and sold as wood to the local community. So this way of working 150 years ago was really very common. Today we need other tools to understand and to be able to work in this same way. And that's why we invented a platform called Harvest Map, which allows other designers also and builders to work with the knowledge that we gained. Because after 15 years of working, we had many different sources of materials that we knew would be applicable in construction, but that we wouldn't use because they were not local to the project we would work on at that moment. So we made a map with over 250 resources in the Netherlands, with many different varieties of applications. So for instance, parts from trains, buildings that were demolished, but as well furniture that was taken down. One of the materials that's on the Harvest Map is this one. It's one of our favorite ones. It's called contour sheet, and actually what this is the remains after the steel industry takes out different parts for car industry, and after that a steel sheet remains that has the same size, thicknesses and type may vary, and instead of scrapping this to small parts and transporting it around the globe and then to turn it into a new product like a fence, we buy it directly from the factory at a 3 times higher price and then apply it for buildings. This can be used for fences here next to the villa that I just showed, to grow plants, to give a little bit more of privacy. But as well, other architects hire us to matchmake the supply with the need here for a facade of a museum in Amsterdam. And we had this same more consulting matchmaking role for this large venue and waste collection center in the center of The Hague, where the municipality for the first time set the brief on the highest amount of upcycled materials that would be possible. The nice thing about this project is that it's not just a skin for any program, but actually as well the collection of waste material by the general public is the core of this project. And the aim, of course, is to upcycle these materials in the future. We rather call this a resource palace than a waste collection center. So that's, I think, what we need to go to, is to really give materials that used to be waste, to give them a higher value, also in how they're looked at. Another material we're using very often is blades from wind turbines. Our green energy does not just use green resources. It provides maybe green energy, but the materials that they're made of are actually glass fiber and polyurethane. They never were invented to be recycled or upcycled. And for a long time they have been put in landfills or in Western Europe incinerated, while this is a very high quality material that can live for at least another 50 years. So when we were commissioned the playground in the city of Rotterdam, we just learned about this new material and used 5 of these turbine blades to create an exciting new playground, where we just drilled a couple of additional holes, connected the existing stainless steel parts that could live for another 50 years as well, and created a playground that kids very much like, because you cannot just play over it, but you can also play hide and seek inside it. And again, here we were able to save 80 to 90% of CO2 emissions by not using new materials and not have these turbine blades incinerated. This is a bench next to the Erasmus Bridge in Rotterdam, same turbine blades that we applied. The nice thing here is we already had this for 10 years, and then the municipality decided they wanted to change this site for a monument for diversity. We suggested them, can't we hire a painter that is the artist that creates actually a third life layer and a new meaning to the existing furniture. So that's what the municipality of Rotterdam decided, and by that our turbine blades got a third life. Since we also launched in China in 2016, we could set up the same chain of suppliers, contractors and designers to create urban furniture there. So this is the first one that we launched in 2020, where actually 2022 at the Shenzhen Biennial, where the first urban furniture blade made was realized in China. And since the flow of these materials is enormous, every year tens of thousands of blades are being decommissioned in the coming years. We started to look at larger scale applications because we cannot absorb all the turbine blades just for playgrounds or urban furniture. So currently we're looking into sound barriers for railways or roads, where they have a multiple function as well to store water and to grow green, actually diminishing the amount of fine dust generated by the roads and the railways. Since this year, we branched BladeMate into an independent company because we have a growing demand of these products, and this company can really dedicate towards the application of blades in the urban environment. Well, if we look at more historical wind turbines, we think they might be much more intelligent than the one we are building now. The current ones just have one function, one output, but actually 400 years ago in the Netherlands we were able to build buildings that harvest their energy, fabricate new products, house the people who work there, have a shop to sell the products, and they were built out of natural materials and could be dismantled and put up somewhere else. So actually a completely integrated design that this intelligence we lost a little bit in the past years, and we started calling this cyclifiers as a kind of new function in our city with the contemporary flows that we have to deal with. We're currently looking at 14 different flows in cities and try to see how can we create more value with what is available. Well, one of the cyclifiers, actually I'm presenting from this location, although my background maybe looks like I'm in Venice, is Blue City. It's a former tropical swimming paradise that got derelict in 2019. And with a group of entrepreneurs, we were able to acquire this building and transform it into a hub for the circular economy. And I have to make a small addition to what we call circular, because of course you know the transition from linear economy to circular economy, but this usually means that materials are cycling in a closed loop. Well, if we look at nature, a leaf falling from a tree never becomes a leaf on that tree again. So we are more looking at the open system, more natural, where resources that become a waste can be absorbed by other companies, creating the highest possible value, and by in their process have resources that can be used by other companies again. So it's more like on the right side, the blue economy, which is more dynamic and interactive and open. And in Blue City, we made a system where actually in the beginning we have only a few companies, but by plugging in more companies, they can start to exchange with each other these resources. We started with creating office spaces, having 90% of reclaimed materials applied here. So this was really a nice challenge to see if we could create this office environment only with reclaimed materials. We also have a central lab for the by now 55 entrepreneurs in Blue City, and the ability to actually create new building products. And then after the building is completed, in this case the laboratory, we calculate the amount of CO2 that has been saved by implementing an harvested material compared to a new material. Well, Blue City is an ongoing project. A project that just has been completed is this one in Den Bosch. It's a former public facility building that was built in the 1980s. Not very nice, but actually interesting that a housing corporation decided this location to be demolished and to turn it into apartments for new renters. But there was already an organization of 15 people who temporarily used this building, and they suggested to not demolish this, but to become their renters and refurbish the building. So we made an analysis, how could we actually use the existing structure, build on top of it, using the existing foundation, keeping most of it, adding an energy system that uses the passive energy that can be generated by the building envelope, have a green roof and garden system where most of the food that they consume can be grown, but as well to collect the water that is falling on their apartments and use it for local use. And of course to have most of the materials harvested where we built new, on the parts where we built new apartments. So this was the design that we made 4 years ago, where this is really a kind of a new vision on how social housing could look like. This didn't stay a dream, but actually 4 years ago the construction started, materials were collected, different materials were stored in a large storage, and actually with the help of the community that is going to rent their houses, materials were prepared and then applied by the contractor. And in the end, the local community also finished their own houses. And the whole building has been completed by the end of last year, but actually was opened 2 weeks ago, and now the green is growing. What is nice is that in such a project we're able to realize a circularity of over 80%, which is more than 10 times the amount that is currently the standard in the Netherlands. And we think that this is only possible if you start to collaborate with the local community, because they set their own circular and sustainable ambitions, and collaborating with them as an architect and the housing corporation creates a much higher amount of sustainable improvement than if you would do this top down. So we think that that is one important step, is that really sustainable development should be done with a collective from bottom up. Well, another very nice example of a cyclifier and a bottom-up initiative is for the market in Rotterdam. It's one of the biggest markets in Western Europe, open-air markets, but after a day of market there used to be a lot of waste, and this would be collected by the municipality at the end of the day. A local cooperative started making a claim, a right to challenge, to be allowed to collect the waste already during the market and to store this and to sort it and to actually create more value with what was wasted. So we designed a resource station for that organization in order to support that whole process. Where you see, I'm sorry, this slide is in Dutch, but it shows all the materials entering the market and the products that are being sold. But there is a large flow of waste that the cooperative is separating and also using to create new products that can be sold or given out on the market. Well, the whole design developed quite a bit. It was a process of over 5 years in Rotterdam, dealing with many different parts of the municipality that had to collaborate, and they don't know how, especially with local cooperative and private organizations. It's not that easy, but we managed to design something that we could build, and this shows the industrial space inside where all these materials are separated and sorted, but as well outside we created completely new urban functionality to the city of Rotterdam by adding even a running track over the station and a grandstand to watch the football play next to it. And we realized this last February, where again, we are really very happy that we are able to realize a project with over 90% of reclaimed materials. And in this case, one of the materials that really speaks are the liquid containers that come from food industry. We could use them here to store water from the roof, but as well to grow plants. And in this case, each tank is a garden and actually managed by one of the school kids of the school that you see behind one of the tenants of the resource station. This whole design and even the construction has been really locally supported, so it's really designed with and built with the people who are actually going to use this. So this again gives a lot of pride with the people working in this. And of course, we collected over 90% of reclaimed materials from maximum 200 kilometers from the site. It's very nice that the project just last Friday won the Rotterdam Architecture Prize. So even now in the architectural, you could say the organizations that are looking at where is the future heading, this kind of development is really seen as something very promising, as a new process. Well, I'll conclude with a more systemic look at our practice of an architect, because after working for over 25 years, we also discovered that it's not just about creating new tools and showing that it's possible, because we found a lot of obstructions from all kind of context that we currently have to deal with. And one of the important ones is our economical context. So that's when I became curator for the Dutch Pavilion in Venice. I invited Carlijn Kingma, who made this incredible drawing called The Waterworks of Our Economy. She is an architect and actually took the system of money and translated this into a water system. And this shows where the water and the money ends up, who gets more wealthy and who actually doesn't get a drop from this anymore. She drew this by hand in over 2,000 hours and 2.5 years of very deep investigations with banks, government institutes, etc. So it's a very well-informed visual of how our economy works. We turned this into an exhibition, which you could actually more or less enter live, but as well we started to look at what can we learn from this economy. And I want for this presentation want to show two important drivers of why in general it's very hard for architects to work in a sustainable way. And one is on the left top. That's where money is generated. When you start having a loan, new money is created, and this actually leads to a very unsustainable need to grow. This is a part where actually someone is getting a mortgage and like 20 to 50 times the amount of money is actually generated and flown into our economy. But of course this mortgage has to be paid back with interest, aiming for a new growth model. So we translated this into a simple way where we really think that if we want to move into a more circular future, that we cannot continue with basing our future on debt that has to be paid back with interest, gaining for some probably high profit in the future, but that actually we have to step out of our debts and actually more think of a sufficient economy where the money is enough to do what is actually needed. The other part is at the back end of the system where the taxes are gathered by our governments. What we see here is the tubes of the taxes, and you can't read it on this scale, but it's the largest tube is the income tax, the taxes that are taken on labor. And a very small tube it's even called other taxes here, is on resources and materials, for instance. Well, that's what we also discovered. So 5 years ago, we started to promote what we call the tax shift. because currently on the left you see that labor taxes are very big, taxes on CO2 and emissions are very low, which actually makes it very unprofitable to put additional effort in reclaiming materials, repairing them, storing them, or renovating buildings. Because the competition with new materials, new buildings is really very tough. So we actually address the government and tell them, well, as companies we can change our business model, but actually the government needs to change its business model too. So that's why we look, really lobby for making the labor taxes lower and creating higher taxes on CO2. We started a petition in our construction sector. Over 600 companies actually backed our petition, which helped us generating more attention for this. We do this together with an NGO called X-Tax, who is working on a European level, lobbying for this, this transition in taxes. And we're able to actually get a commission illustrating this whole principle. So this is 4 benches. Funny enough, we got the commission to make benches and furniture for a tax office. So we thought this was a perfect environment to show the transition from linear to circular economy, where with high labor costs, you do not want to treat wood too much. So you make a flat roof with small beams. Actually, the second bench shows, okay, if you make the hidden cost more visible, it already starts to become less comfortable. If you would actually lower the amount of labor cost, then you could cut every beam into half and make a round one. But of course, like I said in the beginning, we want to have an open economy. So the right bottom one is the open one, where with low labor, we have much more functionality even on the inside of this circle. This we were building as an interior for the tax office, including some instructional 3D pictures showing the possible transition, hoping to stimulate the employees of the tax office to think about this. And in the meantime, we were able to do some researches on buildings, what would actually happen if you change your taxes and how would this influence the decisions on our work. And we're really happy that in the first petition only one bank supported our bid, but currently all the banks in the Netherlands made an agreement with the Dutch ministry to research this tax shift and see how this actually can stimulate our more circular economy. So we see that the momentum for this is growing very much. So that's how it's not just enough, we feel, to create tools, but also to look at our surroundings, understand how the systems are working and where obstructions are made that we also need to redesign in order to create a better environmental surroundings for our way of working. And I hope this inspires you to work on these ideas in Canada as well. Thank you very much.